My apologies, Chief, but would you mind waiting until tomorrow for that? Today is, well, you know.
All right, Dudgy. In return, though.
I know. That place, right? Huh? What are these guys, telepathic? Alright. Yeah. That is true. Hold it! Really, Chief Gans. At the very least, there is one very large benefit you reap from all this.
Oh, I wasn't aware. What is this benefit?
That would, of course, be the position you have, Chief of Police. Oh! The resolution of the SL9 incident secured your promotion to Chief. That in itself is sufficient motive.
Oh! That's a good one.
Huh?
Do you really think I'm that incompetent?
What do you mean?
Even without that case, I was already in line to become the next chief. The resolution of SL9 merely sped up the inevitable a little.
Is that true, Edgeworth? Yes. He was going to be made chief anyway. Gah!
Be careful when pointing that finger, or you might wind up being the one pointed at.
So that means there's only one possible motivation for you to commit forgery. If you didn't do it for yourself, then you did it for someone else.
Don't be silly, Worthy. You know me better than that. There are only 3 people I look out for. Me, myself, and I. There, it's out in the open now. Udgy, would you mind if I changed my testimony a little?
By all means, please do.
I wouldn't be anyone's accomplice if there was nothing in it for me.
Nothing in it for you?
Sorry, but the only person I care about is yours truly. That girl, Lana's little sister, was it? If you think I felt sorry for her, you'd better think again.
You're right. You don't feel sorry for anyone.
Be tough on crime and tough on people. That's how I was raised.
You seem to be lax enough on yourself, though.
Oh! That's a good one, Worthy.
Could there have been something in it for him? Given his selfishness, would he have helped someone out? I think I'm going to point out an accomplice. True, you might not help out anyone for their sake, but if it would benefit you, you might decide to assist someone. Mr. Wright, it appears you're positively determined to portray the Chief as a nice man who likes to lend people a hand. That's not what I mean. Very well, I'll ask. Who is this person you believe Chief Gant may have helped forge evidence? Lana Skye. Take that! Chief Prosecutor Lana Skye, the defendant? I believe it's quite obvious in light of the circumstances. Emma Skye fell victim to an unfortunate series of events. Who would want to help her more than her own sister, Lana? And as for Chief Gans, he would also have a reason to help Lana if she asked him to. That reason, of course, is self-profit. Self-profit? What do you mean? After the SL9 incident was resolved, Lana Skye was appointed chief prosecutor at the prosecutor's office. The person who arranged this job change was you, Chief Gant. But how would he profit from all this? He would be able to use the chief prosecutor as his puppet. Essentially, he would acquire unchecked authority over all investigations. Do you mean to tell me that despite Chief's formidable appearance, he plays with puppets? Oh wait! You must mean puppet as in someone forced to do his bidding. Never mind. Admit it, Chief. You assist Lana Skye in forging evidence. Your motive? To appoint her as chief prosecutor so you can control her!
Right, oh my boy. You have quite an imagination. Let me ask you something.
What?
Do you have any proof of this? That I controlled Lana? For example, is Lana testifying that I've done such a thing?
Lana. She's keeping quiet to protect Ema. There's no way she'd testify against Gant.
I'm afraid without any proof, this all amounts to nothing more than mere conjecture. Unless that is also what happened in this incident.
This incident?
Which one would that be? Of course, I'm talking about the murder of Detective Bruce Goodman. The chief prosecutor has been acting strange throughout this entire trial. Almost as if someone has been controlling her. Worthy, you'd better watch your tongue. I wouldn't want you to get hurt.
Just what do you mean? What he means, Your Honor, is that Chief Gant is involved in the murder of Detective Goodman. Not only that, but the Chief is now making Lana take the rap to cover up his involvement.
What? Order. I said order! Mr. Wright, you can't be serious. Huh? This is an affront to the highest ranking officer in our law enforcement agency. To accuse the chief of police of blackmail and murder? That's impossible!
Your Honor, I was merely reiterating what Mr. Edgeworth said in easier-to-understand language.
It's too late, Mr. Wright. There's no turning back for us now.
It looks like he's the one who's decided to go through with this.
Can you prove this, Mr. Wright, that the chief, a high-ranking officer of the law, is involved in this murder?
Good question.
Regardless of his rank or title, Chief Gant is just a man. The question is he a criminal? I believe the evidence will tell.
I see. Alright then. Show us this evidence that ties Chief Gant to the murder of Detective Goodman. Just remember, it better be good. Oh, it's good, alright. This ID card record. Take that! This is the ID card list. Yes, the one that shows who entered the evidence room on the day of the crime. There was one ID on the list we couldn't determine the owner of yesterday. 777-7777.
Sorry, but there's no way you can prove that's my card number.
It's your number.
What? How'd you know that?
The safe in Chief Gant's office requires a code to open. A 7-digit code.
7 digits? You don't mean...
I'm afraid so, Your Honor. The code was 777-7777. The same as the remaining ID card number on that list.
Chief Gant, you entered the evidence room on the day of the crime! Order! Chief Gant, what do you have to say? Nothing! The defense's search of my office was in violation of regulations. And I will demand Mr. Wright be punished to the maximum extent of the law. But right now, this court demands an explanation from you about the use of this ID card. Chief Gant, so you admit it? You entered the evidence room on the day of the crime? What about it? I'm chief of police. Whether it's the evidence room or the bathroom, what's the difference? I can go anywhere I want. Tell me, when you entered the room, were you alone? I always go to the bathroom alone, as I do with the evidence room. Good one.
Detective Goodman wouldn't have happened to be with you on that day, would he?
Of course not. Why would he be? I hadn't seen him in days.
You hadn't seen him in days, Chief Gant? I'm afraid you've just undone yourself. On that day, you had to have met with Detective Goodman.
What do you mean? This trial's purpose is to determine Lana Sky's guilt. No, it isn't, Your Honor. This trial's purpose is to determine the truth. If Chief Gant met the victim on the day of the crime, then we need to determine one thing. What transpired during that meeting? In that case, Mr. Wright, I'm going to have to ask you for evidence.
Show us proof that the victim went to meet Chief Gant on the day of the crime. Ah, let's see. What kind of evidence would we need? Yeah, this looks good. Take that! Detective Goodman lost his ID card on the day of the crime. Or to be more accurate, Jake Marshall stole it. So Detective Goodman filled out a lost item report. He would have had to have given that report to the Chief of Police. Yet you are in possession of the report, which means you can't be sure if he filed it. He filed it? How do I know, you ask? Because he needed to enter the evidence room that day. He needed to? Yes, to transfer the evidence out. Oh. Detective Goodman took the form to you, Chief Gant. Then, you accompanied the detective to the evidence room. I accompanied him? There's no other way the murderer and Detective Goodman could have entered the room. Hold on, let me guess what you're going to say next. I, the Chief of Police, murdered poor Goodman. Exactly. But wait! The Chief didn't necessarily need to accompany him to the evidence room. He could have just lent him his ID card. Yes. Now that you mention it, I believe I might have done something of the sort. Sorry, but that's not possible. According to the record, your card was only used once. But you showed us your ID card earlier. If you had really lent it to Detective Goodman, it would have been found on his body. No!